She Can, we tell women's stories. We try and show how women got to where they are today to be role models for others because we learn so much when we listen to other people's stories. We make sense of the world by doing that. And I'm really excited to have Kate Daudy here today. Kate, you're a British conceptual artist known for your public interventions and large scale sculptures. You're working across a huge variety of media, whether that's film, NFTs, performance, sculpture, writing, mixed media. You are recognized globally as one of London's most influential people. You've been named by Louis Vuitton as one of 200 visionaries. And your work focuses around the human experience in the context of the natural world. Tell us a bit more about that.
I hello. I am working here in London. I started making work, I suppose, maybe like 15 years ago. Really, I would see myself as a uh, a failed poet, and so I started writing on things all around me and on my own clothes. I always wrote on my own inside my own clothes as a child because I was very shy, and so I would take out the linings of my skirts and jackets and pockets and fill them with objects and words, and then slowly I started putting these words onto the outside of my clothing, and then one thing led to the other, and suddenly I was making art, which I now realize I'd been making since I was a very small child. Um, and one thing that I was saying to you earlier that I did want to talk about was the importance of allowing your children to get really bored. And I would say a lot of my creativity, well, all of my creativity and ideas came from being a quiet child left to my own devices. And never really thought that things weren't possible, and just spent my time, I don't know, making little villages out on the grass, and sewing things, and making things, not really drawing so much. Um, but anyway, I think all of that came out of boredom, and I think I see a lot of children now very stimulated, especially to do artistic things, and but very kind of spoon fed. I think it's quite good just to leave children just to do stuff, make things on their own.
Yeah. Which I love, Kate, because I think that our education system now is such a linear journey. They go in at 4, they're fed a ton of things, and they don't even really have time to think anymore. And you just told me that you have been nominated as a fellow for Columbia University, and they're going to send you to Paris next year to think, which is amazing. Tell us more about that.
Oh, I'm overjoyed, really, and super happy to have been nominated as a fellow at Columbia University at their Institute of Ideas and the Imagination, where they have 12 fellows from all over the world. 6 of them are academics attached to Columbia University, and 6 are in creative fields. So there's a poet and a writer and a filmmaker, I think, and me, and they get us together for a whole year in Paris in this Institute of Ideas and the Imagination. And the idea is that together we form a body that we create our own individual work, but also that we work together and connect, so that we are able to make the time to think about the way that we live our lives, I suppose, and the way that things might change. They introduce us to people, and it just seems like a dream, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dream. Kate,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit more about your journey. You were talking about you started, writing things in your clothes, and you started that as a girl. Then at one point you put it on the outside of your clothes, and then you started writing on paper for years. So really the journey of an artist is a very long journey. There's always a point where you start and you don't really even know that you're doing it, and then slowly but surely you developed into someone who is recognized internationally for her conceptual ideas, for taking concept challenges that we face as humans and create them into something where you're communicating things. You're really making art out of reclaimed materials. You're using it as a tool for social change. So tell us a bit more about those pivotal points in your journey where you recognize that, yes, I am an artist and this is what I'm here to do.
I think part of my particular work as an artist is I like to understand and share knowledge, I suppose. So I always like to work in a new field, try to get some sort of an understanding of a new area of human existence, and then communicate that field to a more general public, which is, I suppose, partly why I really enjoy doing work that is in not in museums and galleries. I
Mm.
suppose that's also because I'm just like such a loser, but it's also but it's also because I think that it's quite important if you want to invite people to think about things outside of the sort of context of the sort of art world as such. And so I like to write on street corners. I like to I made this project called Am I My Brother's Keeper, which was a UNHCR tent that I wrote on. I went around refugee camps in the Middle East and Southern Europe, talking to refugees about
Mm.
what they'd learned about being a human being from their experience of becoming refugees and living as refugees. And then I tried to convey that the way that they had talked to me through
Yeah,
this artwork,
yeah.
which we put up in all sorts of places.
Mm.
We put it up in a petrol station, we put it up outside a supermarket, we put it in St. Paul's Cathedral, we put it in the Saatchi Gallery, we put it in schools and universities. We just wanted to sort of pop it up in places where people weren't expecting to be thinking about what does it mean to be a refugee, and how can we learn from this experience. Because my view is that we are all one, that as humans we're sharing a common humanity, and
Yeah,
that therefore it must be possible for us each to learn from one another if we give ourselves fully to trying to understand another person.
yeah,
um, then we can learn from their experience.
yeah,
So that was that doing that project, um, well, going and meeting those refugees really changed my whole
yeah.
existence. I'd say it was like I was trying to describe it to someone saying, you know when you do the washing up and you've got those marigold gloves that you put on. So say my whole life was one of those yellow marigold gloves. It was like that. And then after doing this project with the refugees, it's like you turn the whole thing, like I'm the same person, but like inside out,
Oh,
really.
yeah,
And it made me become much more engaged with inviting people to think about things through my work, because having always loved people, seeing people in these circumstances, living with such dignity and grace and generosity and bravery, made me realize that that's who we all are individually, if we can sort of stop worrying about, buying oranges for tomorrow morning's breakfast, and what do people, do we need to, I can't think what, whatever it is, logistical thing. um, but that inside each and every one of us, we have the possibility to work towards a more harmonious future, and on a very small level. So, so that's something that I like to invite people to recognize within themselves in a variety of different ways. I did it with the project there. I've been working also with a physicist, Kostya Novoselov, who is, oh, he's actually a genius.
He's definitely a
You know,
genius.
you know, when people say, "Oh, he's a genius," you're like, "Oh, yeah, no, he is a genius." He's the youngest guy ever to get a Nobel Prize for physics. I think he got it when he was 34. Um, and he and I have been working together for like 7 years on this project called Everything is Connected, where we're trying to underline to people, whether it be, so in my case, I believe that we're all connected through spirit. Kostya really believes that we're all part of the same connected universe, which is
Yeah.
made of carbon.
Yes.
and and so even though we don't agree on how we're all connected necessarily, we agree that we are all connected, and so we're trying to go around the world together and invite people to think about that. So, for example, I just was talking to him now, and some people in Bremen. We're doing a talk on Thursday about AI and creativity
Yeah.
for the Times Higher Education conference that they have there,
Mhm.
and talking about encouraging children and students to be more creative, because there's all this worry about AI
Yeah.
sort of replacing people's work. But if you are fully expressing your soul's truth and being yourself and know yourself, then you cannot be replaced by any algorithm or individual
Yeah.
system. And so just in fact sort of working within the system to try and invite people to think about the importance of individual thinking
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
creativity.
Which is never just individual thinking, because it's also so collective. And you said that so beautifully before in your notion of being one, and that there is so much more that unites us than divides us. And that's, you've really described the essence of She Can. I mean, it was beautiful for me to listen, because that's exactly why we're here. And I think that by each one making sense, telling your story, thinking with other people, and connecting all the dots, all our dots are individual dots that then make up this puzzle of
Mm.
our shared human existence and shared human stories, and all the shared bits of our lives that ultimately make the world a beautiful place and worth living in. And I love that you take it to this point where you connect with other people who are on their journey, but you make a common something out of it through your art, Kate. So tell us a bit more about a project that you have going on now and where you're at with that project. What does your day to day look like?
Well, now I'm preparing for a show which is opening on May the 9th.
Yeah.
So the photographer's coming on the 24th. So I'm getting everything, finishing everything, getting everything ready, signing everything. We're putting it up onto the Art Logic system, so it's got all the measurements and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the following, and that's a show called Super Bloom. And then on the 16th of May, I'm doing a project in London where I'm writing on buildings across London, inviting, and that's called The Seeds of Hope. That's a project that replaces the tent project that I was talking to you about, which is uh, inviting people, because a lot of refugees, when they leave, my tent got lost and destroyed.
Oh.
Um, so we were like, oh, what are we going to do instead? And so instead, we've embarked on this new project, which is starting on May the 16th, which is drawing seeds and small plants growing out of the cracks of buildings
Mhm.
all over London. So we've got King's Cross, the Barbican, the South Bank Centre, the Ishmaeli Centre, UCL, like all these different public and private buildings, and talking about how people and refugees in particular can flourish in the most unlikely places
Mm.
if we give them what they need. And so it's a project about kindness, really. We're inviting people to be more thoughtful and considerate towards everybody. So that we're doing. Then we're going to do that in Oxford. Then I'm doing it at Glastonbury Festival. I'm so happy. So we're doing some gates and walls at Glastonbury Festival with these big banners with these flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm preparing that also. So I'm spending a lot of time on the phone, like talking about logistics and
Yeah.
Sort of how do we, if we're going to do the back of a stage that's 12 meters by 10 meters, how are they going to sew the canvases together? Like it's a lot of the work is quite
Admin heavy.
yeah, it's very admin heavy. Then I have a retrospective at the Sorbonne in Paris in October, which is kind of amazing. And so we're preparing the catalogue for that because the catalogue has to be ready for June. So a lot of the work that an artist does is not at all, sitting around, doing some nice drawings, but it's a lot of it is just getting things ready, writing the text, preparing the catalogue. I'm teaching also at the Sorbonne in the autumn, so I'm preparing for big lectures. So that means a lot of organization. So a lot of it isn't, when people say to me, like kids, they say, oh, it must be so great being an artist because you just do what you want all day and draw and think and it's really not that at all. It's like a lot of it is, I mean, of course, it's thinking and making things, but say for example, when we wrote on a flock of sheep in Segovia recently with Kostya to illustrate the Einstein's theory of unification. We had to they stopped the whole city for a day. So we had to deal with the police department, the mayor department. It was commissioned by the Ministry of Culture. We had to write the whole thing up. We had to talk to the shepherd. We had to order the special sheep spray. Like we had to get there. We had to decide where we're going to walk. We made a film. So then we had to have the film crew. We had to have, like that, it looks like I kind of got up in the morning and, drew on we wrote on a flock of sheep, but actually that took like 8 people 6 months to organize. There's a lot of that. And so
Kate, but
that's
when
why
did you think I want to draw on sheep in Segovia? Where did that idea come from?
Oh, well, that idea came from actually the Spanish Ministry of Culture wrote to me and asked me if I would do that. But the original sheep writing project is an idea that I had in the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, where I was having a show maybe like 2 years before. And my friend Kostya was explaining to me about the difference between random numbers and chaotic numbers, and there's a special, so of course he's very good at explaining things and I have no understanding of mathematics at all, and I nearly failed my math GCSE. I had to have I can't count. So a random number, which is used for a lot of coding and security and all sorts of financial models and stuff. A random number is very difficult to create. And there's an institute in America which employs 12 PhDs and professors and I don't know what, all these brainy people who work on creating a new random number every 2 minutes. And so I was kind of laughing about that because they're like, oh, it's quite easy to create a random number fully anyway. So we were just kind of having a laugh about that. And then I was looking out over this flock of sheep, which is at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which is one of the most beautiful sculpture parks in the whole of Europe, definitely, and the world, perhaps, whatever, where we were having this show. So I was like, so Kostya, maybe if I wrote a random number randomly on those sheep, and then the sheep wandered around randomly, and the tourists and visitors coming to the Yorkshire Sculpture Park saw the sheep from all these different angles, they would be creating random numbers all the time like that, right? And so he said, yes, absolutely, that's right. So we were negotiated with the shepherd to write random numbers on the sheep. Kostya told me which numbers to write, and I think that time we wrote on like 270 sheep, and they went around doing their thing. And the mathematics department from Manchester University came and did all these tests on the sheep and how many numbers. And in fact, in the course of 1 month, we had created more random numbers than there are atoms in this universe. And so it was this huge thing in the world of mathematics. And we I mean, a huge thing. It wasn't a huge thing, but I mean, it was like, so then the Russian, this was before we were at war,
Ukraine, yeah.
this Russian art foundation commissioned a film about these sheep, and then they screened this sheep film, um, and for a whole load of the best mathematicians and physicists in the world. And so then anyway, all sorts of different sort of sheep things kind of came out of that.
Kate, so you're really an idea machine to make people think. Tell us a bit more what you think, the qualities you hold that make you good at what you do.
That's nice of you to say. I wouldn't say that I am particularly good at what I do, um, because there's so many really just brilliant artists, and I'm not sure, that I would say that I am one. Um, I think what I like about what I do, is that it's new every single day. I get to meet some of the most interesting people in the world and work with them just constantly, which I love because I love people. I would say, uh, we were talking about this the other day with a friend of mine who's a very great writer called Marina Warner, she's called. And we were saying we're sloggers, like we work really hard,
Yeah.
and and I would say that's something that helps, just carrying on until it's finished. And I would say the thing that's most important for me is that I have a really nice family,
Mm.
and they support me in my work. They let me work funny hours. They're always nice to me, and I would say that as an artist, if I worked on my own, I would be like nothing. But I work with a lovely family behind me and really nice people who kind of prop me up when I feel low or that what I'm doing is pointless. And so I think having a really wonderful, loving infrastructure is what helps each of us to get anything done, because I think you have to be someone pretty special to get through life without loving people by your side, nice friends and family. And so I'd say that's my greatest asset.
Kate, and so if you had to give tips, and I know you go into schools and into places of learning and universities, what tips do you give to young people who look up to you, that you're a role model, they're inspired by you, they're inspired by your work. What tips do you give them to, walk into in a direction that they aspire?
I think the thing that I try to say to my children, and that I try to constantly remind myself of, is to do what you really like. You know, if somebody had ever told me that I would be able to, I don't know, send 3 kids to school by drawing on bits of brown paper from the post office, and talking to all my best friends all day, I would have never believed them. But as I move forward in life, I find that the people who I see and who I work with are often people with extremely unlikely paths. And I think there's I had a discussion with my son's headmaster, who I liked very much. So it's not, I'm not like reporting a terrible thing, but he he was saying that he thought that he should be pushed to get into this, I don't know, really fancy school or whatever.
Mm.
And he was saying, you know, after school, you'll need to sit with him a bit and maybe get him like a tutor or whatever. And I said to him, but no, no way. You know, like my kid is 5. Do you know, like my job is when he comes home from school that he can play with the rabbits and hang around and I don't know, we do a jigsaw puzzle, whatever. Do you know, like my job is to help my child to know himself
Yeah.
and to find out who he is, and then he can be that person to the best of his ability. And if he isn't naturally going to get into this really fancy school or whatever, then so be it, because the important thing is that he flourishes and really knows himself, and then he will be, you know, I don't know, I can't think, you know, the most interesting and innovative bonsai trainer in the world, do you know, or, you know, become, you know, the greatest hair dyer or, you know, whatever it is. And this is something that I always say to children is try to know yourself, you know, like really read books, get bored, spend loads of time by yourself, spend loads of time chatting with your friends and get to know like who you really are, and then you will be able to follow that true path instead of kind of running after all these labels and things, because I think the world is changing so fast
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
that um that I don't think it's going to be very helpful in 15 years that you went to such and such a fancy university. That's not enough. Do you know what's going to single out people who make an interesting contribution to the future is that they are truly being themselves and giving that to the future, because otherwise, as we were saying, you know, then you can be replaced by a computer. If you're a whiz at mathematics and you just want to, I don't know what, like buy and sell things or whatever it is, that's not going to be enough. What's going to make it different is how you personally do it. So I think it's important to invest time and affection in young people, so that they can have the confidence to say, you know what, actually, I'm really obsessed with sellotape dispensers, and I'm going to turn that world upside down. Do you know?
Which I love, Kate, and I think it's a very important conversation that more conversations have to be had around this linear path that we all think and put our children on. If they go to the right nursery school, then they'll get in the right primary school and the right secondary school, and they have to have this journey, and we have to teach them and give them tutors and make them and all of that, which is why I think people like you, Kate, and all the other artists, especially Conceptual, we need you to be role models for us to think and give us a different version of a life that is not linear, where you follow the path of what you believe should be done, or what you're into right now, and that leads to something else. And it's like breadcrumbs that you look for that show you the path of what you actually enjoy. Where's your joy? Where are you going to be able to contribute in a larger construct of the world?
Also failure. Do you
Yeah.
know, like I think people are always trying to avoid failing at things, and and I would say, you know, I've failed at so many things, you know, and really, you know, just disasters. And I think I think that's also what I was trying to say about having a sort of loving friend and friends and family is, you know, then you can really mess up because you've just completely committed to something and it's gone wrong, or you've made a terrible error of judgment, or you've said something you really didn't want to say. My whole life is just littered with monumental failures, but those teach you a lot. You can learn so much from failures, and so I think that that's something that's very good for uh, people, is just to try lots of different things and fail at loads of different things. And you don't have to, you can, and it's not wasting time, you know going like, oh, now I'm going to make a whole load of porcelain seeds for my show, right? So maybe it'll be a complete disaster. I'll cover my whole studio with porcelain, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to require massive logistics getting all these porcelain seeds to the kiln, and what a stupid idea. But I really want to do it, and it's the same if you want to study Arabic at university, or you want to, I don't know what, sort of have a pink sofa or whatever it is, just try it, just really try to do lots of different things and fail at loads and loads of things, because in the end, it'll make you much more happy.
Yeah, I think that all of that is so important. Kate, what are you most proud of to date?
My children. Definitely, my children are so wonderful. I'm so proud of my children. Yeah. And they, yeah, I really am. They're just fantastic. But do you mean of my work?
Well, it could be anything. I mean, it definitely is. I think most mothers will say my children, because
Hmm.
that is really, it's an instinctive thing. We say it because it's the truth of the truth of the truth. But
Hmm.
you can expand if you want to.
I'm proud. Well, I'm just really proud that I can keep working. Like, I think that's my goal.
Yeah.
Is that I never ever want to stop making things,
Mm.
meeting interesting people, learning. And I suppose I'm every day very grateful that I still can. Like, there's still people who want to see things that I've made, or hear what I might want to say, or I'd say that's my greatest source of joy. And so I suppose probably also pride. Yeah.
Kate, so tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you. You've described a little bit all the things that are coming up. Is there another big project coming up? You're going to spend a year in Paris. What do the next couple of years look like?
Oh yes, also I'm doing this really interesting project in Bolivia, which is, that's just, it's such a, I mean, it'll take a bit of time to explain, but it's called Telling the Bees. My part of this project is called Telling the Bees. And so for this, it's a project to do with social change through agriculture. There's three parts to this project. There's the first part is my friend Nikki Barbary Bleyleben, who's this wonderful sociologist and a sort of activist. She has acquired 400,000 hectares of cloud forest in Bolivia, which is, amongst other things, it's a corridor for panthers and leopards, and so it's partly a wildlife conservation project.
Mhm.
Partly, she's also working with this amazing chef who's called Klaus Meyer, who had a restaurant in Copenhagen called Noma. It's now closed,
Yes,
but
very
he has a
famous. Yeah.
restaurant. He has a restaurant in Bolivia called Gustu, and so he's been working on this very ambitious project of social change through agriculture, where he's been gathering ancient food crops from across Bolivia and South America and growing them so that he can make new foods, learning from the past. And so he is also planting crops in this forest, and he set up an amazing school for people to learn about agriculture and about cooking and nutrition and all of these things, sort of as a project of social change, so that people can be freed from flour and beef and all of these sort of like Western products. And then my part is the art part. So I am building biomorphic beehives for the bees in this forest. I've already been making work with the honey from these bees, which is like this amazing wild orchid honey from the cloud forest in Bolivia.
Amazing.
And I'm also going to be working with the guy who invented the biggest 3D printer in the world, this guy called Filomeno Martino, to create architectural structures out of the forest floor in which people can come and eat this incredible food. So they're going to be these like ephemeral structures in the cloud forest associated with this wildlife conservation project and social change through agriculture project and this great chef. So I'm going to be working a lot on that. I'm going there in November, and that's also part of the work that Columbia University is supporting me with this fellowship, to do the research behind this, because it's a project about how do we communicate with nature, in fact.
Mm. Amazing, Kate. It's been amazing to talk to you. I feel like we could talk another 10 hours and
Yeah.
we might not even get to the bottom of everything.
I know,
But
it's so fun, right?
in the sort of, yeah, I think I'm very grateful for you being such an inspiring role model of showing us a life that is different, inspiring, big ideas, seeing them through to the end results that are always, big examples of what is important for us to think about as a collective.
Well, I hope so. It's very, very nice to meet you. And I think that you're doing wonderful work, encouraging young women and girls to make the most of themselves and of their opportunities also, and to create new ones. And if I can help anybody in any way, please let me know, on their artistic path, as it were.
Thank you.